And Ewan is remaining here. Thank you for your previous presentation. He's remaining now because he's taking part in the next panel discussion. I'd like to invite Ken Murphy and Peter Ruiz to join us here as well, please. This is a discussion pretty much on the future of brands and how you use your brand to drive not just higher sales, but also higher margins within your business. Ewan, you know already. Ken Murphy is the Chief Operating Officer at Boots here in the UK, of course, and Peter Ruiz is Buying and Brand Director at the John Lewis Partnership. Welcome to both of you as well. Using product to reinvigorate growth. Ken Murphy, what does that mean to you?
I think in one word, it's all about innovation. What we know of the consumer today is that they are still willing, even in a very depressed economy, to pay for true innovation. But it's innovation that has to feel really personal to them. We think of innovation these days not only as a product, but also as the experience that surrounds the product. So the way you interact with the customer, how you personalize that product to the customer, and the kind of customer experience they have when they interact with your brand, whether it be in a store or digitally.
And Peter, what does it mean to you?
I think it's very similar. I'm never ever surprised about the customer's ability to find your best products, and whether it's an innovation or it's just a beautiful product, it's the currency of everything we do, and even more so in the current economy. So my fear is always that we start to walk away from innovation as we get into a difficult economy. They always find the innovation, and they always find the beautiful, gorgeous products every time.
And so having a good product at one point in time is not enough.
No.
Even the best products must change, must evolve.
You can drift in 2 days or 3 days or 6 weeks, and you can, if you don't realise the essence of what you got and recreate it and cherish it and nourish it, then you're back a couple of years very quickly.
What drives that innovation?
I think you have to have a culture of innovation. You have to have people that are not scared to go after that, and I think you have to have some intuitive stuff that's really hard for probably all of us. You have to have a bit of taste, which is not personal taste. It's sort of something that just feels right, looks right, whatever the industry is, and that's probably the hardest bit.
Yeah, and you're on the same page for this, as we've just been talking about innovation, both of the brand and of the business as well. What lessons do you draw on how you use product to reinvigorate growth?
Well, I think it's the acceptance or the frame that we are part of a living kind of thing, is that as human beings, as consumers, want to move forward in their lives, they want to reinvigorate that. So therefore, the innovation focus is absolutely key. It's style, design, innovation, and it's pulling all that together. It's putting that together in a reworked business model, though, that can deliver it at a price that makes it available to the mass customer. The final bit, I guess, in the jigsaw for us at Kingfisher is the consumer research that we have around product and service, and the whole proposition is around making it easier. If you can make it easier for customers to access innovation, style, design, then they will probably do more of it. So there's that end piece as well, which operationalizes it, which I think is pretty key to driving the final growth out of the product work.
And Ken, as you suggested, there is more to brand than just product.
Absolutely. I think everything we do at Boots is based on customer insight. So we spend an awful lot of time and we invest a lot of resources in truly understanding customer needs. And then when we go about innovating to meet those needs, we understand it's a much more holistic solution than just the physical product. So building on what Ewan said, for sure price is a big factor, accessibility is an incredibly important factor, and convenience and ease is also important. And then increasingly the experience, and the experience splits into two different parts. The first is the expertise and the training in how to use and get the best out of that product. And the second is how you make that customer feel. How valued you make them feel, how welcome you make them feel, and how trusted they make you feel in terms of your credibility as a brand and your relevance to their lives as a brand.
Charlie Mayfield, who was here yesterday, was talking about brand being an expression of value, not price on the sticker, but the actual values that inform and drive the business.
Absolutely.
How does Boots approach this?
Well, I think it's absolutely inherent in the DNA of our brand. I think Trust Boots is probably one of the best known strap lines on the high street, and it's at the very root of what we're about. If you go back 160 years to the foundation of the Boots brand, effectively Jesse Boot was a revolutionary. He noticed that the poor died young and the rich got well, and he was determined to break that model. And so he set about making healthcare, basic healthcare, accessible to all in the UK, and we've built on that model. And therefore, it's at the very cornerstone of everything we do. Whether it's a beauty product, whether it's a toiletry product, whether it's a baby product, we adhere to the highest standards of quality, and we also make sure that that product is great value for money.
On a day-to-day basis, how do you protect that branding position? How do you cultivate it?
It's through a mixture of things. I think the first thing to say is that we put the customer at the heart of everything we do, of every conversation we have internally, of it, whether it be about product or whether about service. We've made legendary customer care and active care one of the very cornerstones of our business. If you walk into any of our stores on the high street or interact with any of our colleagues in the support office, they will be able to tell you about the importance of customer care and the role that they play in it. The second thing, as I said, is that we base all our innovation on customer insight. So we are customer-led in every product characteristic. And the third thing is we invest a lot in training and the experience to make sure that our customers can get the best out of that product.
The brand becomes a very powerful weapon in protecting and enlarging profit margins, and particularly so in your sector because of the competition you face, not just from pure health and beauty retailers, but also from general retailers such as the supermarkets.
Of course. It is, and you know, I think without sticking to the values of the brand and without really pursuing the kind of tenets I spoke about, I think we would be an awful lot weaker than we are today if we were to try and fight the might of Tesco and Sainsbury's just on price or just on volume, and instead we seek to differentiate ourselves always through standing for quality, standing for a great experience, standing for good value, and actually standing for convenience, and being really part of the community, because of course we are first and foremost a pharmacy, and we play a very big role in the community in terms of healthcare providers, and that extends beyond healthcare. I mean, 75% of our customer base are women, and what we understand fundamentally about our customers is that looking good is as important as feeling good, and so we see health and beauty as intrinsically linked. We don't see it as a vanity thing. We see it as a very important role we play in society. So it's almost an altruistic mission that we have that goes beyond what you do in a supermarket.
Peter and John Lewis, the experience is somewhat different in that within the store itself there is an emphasis on other people's brands, but overarching it is the power of the John Lewis mega brand itself.
Yep.
How do you manage that sort of relationship between the two?
I think it's always been a challenge of the department store, and we do it in a few ways. We've got a very similar story to Boots. We've got our own version. You know, we've got Speed and Lewis who founded his business and gave his business away to the partners, and that ethos, you have to keep that because these amazing mad entrepreneurs that created our business, if you lose some of that, you throw the baby out with the bathwater, you don't have a business anymore. It's probably easier for us because everyone on the floor has a share in the business, so they create that atmosphere. And I think what we underplayed until recently is the fact that we are a brand in ourselves, not just a retailer. We have very successful parts of our business, which has always been hard for department stores. You know, I think we're famous for home, and I think we're famous in our own right for home. Probably other areas like children's wear, etc., etc. And even now, our number one white goods brand is John Lewis. We sell more John Lewis washing machines than we sell Zanussi washing machines. So I think we started to understand the power of our heritage and the model versus our ability to create our own product. And
what drove that internally? What awakened that consciousness?
I think a few years back as a team, I mean, we didn't have a marketing department before 2006. And I think we were a bit too insular as a business, which I think is well known. And we started to, you know, when I joined the business, anyone ever said to me is, I love John Lewis, I love what it stands for. And we were very intellectual in how we spoke to our customers. So I think we started to try and reflect what the business stands for a little bit, and then that becomes self-perpetuating, both for the people that work in the business and the people that experience the business. And if you fall below that, you soon lose that. So I think we just try to create an experience that's based on the heritage of the business.
But was there a tension with the owners of the other brands that you sell within the store, that you were trying to build up your brand name at what might have been seen as their expense?
For the most part, not, because everyone wants to be part of a successful retailer that has a unique personality and has a unique way of doing things. It's always a tension for us around how much emphasis the brand has on the shop floor, and that's a healthy tension that goes, and probably in your business it's the greatest example when we're dealing with the Estée Lauders of the world, but it's a healthy tension, and they don't want us to be the same as the other department stores, and we have to sometimes remind them of that, but equally they have to tell us that they're brands in their own right, and we need to respect that, and they're absolutely right.
I'm just wondering there how you, if you look, for example, at the fashion rails,
Yep.
How you have the John Lewis branded or own brand or no label, alongside brands which invest a lot in developing their name. How the two fit comfortably in the same space?
I think they fit very comfortably if they respect what you do. And actually, for most brands who sit in a mid to premium place, it's much better that you offer some of that opening price or that mid price if you're talking about fashion with your own brand, and then you're bringing in brands that they do not feel sit with them. So actually, that's quite a comfortable place to be. We you know, our own brand is made in Europe, it's made in the UK, it's made in Italy. We're not really in the business of a sort of cheap and cheerful own brand. So I think it sits quite comfortably. I think they enjoy that integrity.
Now, I want to talk about sourcing and procurement, and I want to bring Ewan in on that as well. But this is a fairly decent point to pause and see if there are any questions so far on the discussion on brands and how you manage own brand and other brands in the same space, and how you cultivate your own brand. If you want to chip into this discussion, then do put your hand up and catch my eye, and we'll get a microphone to you. In the absence of any hands, we will move on to the next leg of the discussion. I'm not saying any, so I'm going to move on to talk then about procurement and sourcing, because when you talk about innovation with the product, you need to be able to be certain that you are able to deliver the product that you are designing.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been through, I guess, a slightly different process on brand through to sourcing than Boots or John Lewis, because I guess we're in a fairly early stage in developing the brands across DIY in the world. And it's been a fairly isolated sector, so not with some of the pressures that you see from some of the biggest brands that are not retailers. So from our point of view, we are developing our own brand stable, because we have some very successful proprietary brands in DIY, but there are relatively few of them. And so to make the offer make sense, the total range offer to make sense and make it easier for our customers worldwide, there's an opportunity to put some brand thinking and some brand principles around that. Very quickly behind that, you then get into, how am I going to source it? Can I have it available? Can I make it easier for our people in store, our colleagues in store, to be able to sell that brand too? So from our point of view, being in 8 countries, we are still fairly separately run from a product point of view. The last 18 months or so, we've been coordinating through one of those networks that we were talking about before. It's called the Kingfisher Brand Network, a way of working which doesn't take away any of the local relevance, but adds all of the supply chain sourcing might behind that. So for example, in our direct source products, we were relatively low 4 years ago, around about 7 or 8% of our total. And I guess compared to the other two brands here, that's very low. We've moved that to 16.5% now, and we'll take that to 35% in the next 4 years. And the level of commonality around our businesses has been very low. Up until last year, it was 1%, and we've had a fantastic year last year, increasing that number by 100% to now 2%. And we have a vision that could get us to about 50% of our businesses worldwide. Basically because customers worldwide, certainly in our 8 countries, have the same needs and wants. And if you focus on the right product, innovation, style, design, and put it in front of them, the bestseller in France is the bestseller in the UK, is the bestseller in Poland, because the whole proposition of product, value, brand works. So a lot of our work has been and will be about coordinating the best of all of that together. And that comes through the sourcing models.
And procurement and sourcing, of course, is the sort of the major objective that you've, the major project you've set for yourself in your role in the business. What is driving that? Is that being driven by the need to reduce costs? Is it being driven by the need to secure future sources of materials? Is it being driven by the sustainability agenda?
I think it's all of those. I don't think there is one sole rationale for doing it. We operate basically in 17 market groups, if you like, because we've got a very wide product portfolio from horticulture right the way through kitchens, through to decor, through to the kind of harder building end. If you look at it, basically we see there is a big advantage in like-for-like sales growth about having the best product under the best brand, just as we were talking about before that Ken was talking through. There are margin gains to be had. So understanding the supply chain of timber, for example. We have a very small specialist team who work just in that space, understanding the world economics of timber, where the best places to source it are, where the best places will be in the next 10 or 15 or 20 years. There's big product security issues with that, and how much we can replant and reinvest into those areas. So it becomes a very, very different economic conversation on timber than it would be on paint, than it would be on light bulbs, than it would be on horticulture. So I think that there's not one sole reason for doing it. It is the rethinking of our total business model. The output will be, we hope, stronger like-for-like sales, a stronger margin growth, and a more efficient process and program for running it. So it's not just all in one basket, it is that business operating model change. Is
there a conflict between a centralized, globalized sourcing function and the delivery of locally targeted product?
Yes, that's why we run a network. And that's you're absolutely spot on. If we were, so we have, at Kingfisher, we have tried to solve this problem for the last 10, 12 years. And the solution has been pretty much the same thing. You put a central group commercial buying function in who pretend to know better than the local buyers in each country, and it's basically a complete farce. So it's not fair for either team because they're good people on both sides. We try and hire the best people we possibly can. It just doesn't work. It just isn't the natural ecosystem of how it works. So what we're trying to do is to run this network approach. Intelligent network is what we've called it. It might be a bit of an ambition at the moment, but it's a network right now. And what that does is try to have some central stimulus, provocation, questions, and see the view from the top of the mountain, if you like. There is then leveraging the commercial teams locally who have the best understanding, are closest to the customer, closest to the operation, and can see how that last 20 or 30 yards works best, and connect them as the powerhouse. So that's where the network thinking comes into working. And certainly that's, as we've said, it takes longer, it takes patience, it's a lot of people and cultural management and leadership. And so there's a lot more humility required because there's a bit of give and take, and it will be done in different ways in different countries and different product groups. And we've got to let that go. If we enforce something from the top, you enforce the hierarchy, it's not a network anymore. So it becomes a huge people and motivation enabler to enable the commercial success to come through, if that makes sense.
It does. Ken, listening to that, how do you stop the supply chain, procurement and sourcing from being an obstacle or a barrier to product innovation?
I think it's all about having a vertically integrated team, and that's something that's a real strength of Boots. So we have obviously on-site at Nottingham R&D facilities, we have manufacturing facilities, and we have our global sourcing and procurement team, and we have our brand teams, and then we have our retail trading and marketing teams. And we work as a virtual team on most of our big product launches and big product innovations, so that we go right through the logic of what does the customer want, what's the best and most efficient way to source the componentry for that product, how do we respond to wild fluctuations in demand. If you've got a component that's sourced in China and there's a 14-week lead time, we go through all of that scenario planning, and then we basically adjust and adapt to manage those scenarios and those risks as a team. And I think that what we're starting to see is that while at one stage vertical integration might have been seen as a weakness because it limited your choices in terms of passing work out to the lowest bidder, I think it's now becoming a massive strength of our business. I think the one thing that has changed that we have had to adapt to is the speed at which you have to innovate, and that you can't be a master of all subjects. So we've now really clearly chosen which areas we research and develop internally, and then we have a much more extensive network of partners that we use for product innovation and even for manufacturing and sourcing if we think that their core expertise is stronger than ours.
You were nodding in agreement there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got to pick the areas where you can get most economic advantage out of. You've got to partner up, absolutely. And so the conversations we're having with Ellen and the team in the kind of thought leadership area, and also partners in every element of our value chain. I think it's knowing what we do and what we do best. And then if we know that we have a need somewhere else, it's not pretending that we can go and do that too. For example, we have in some of our energy saving products, which are the next generation of innovation for us, being able to offset some of the rising energy prices in homes. We've set up a product consortium with some of the most specialist suppliers, with BRE, who are the government specialist agency, with Loughborough University, who are all working as a product consortium around how do you solve this problem, how do you connect everything together. They will deliver it through a B&Q store, a Screwfix store, a Castorama store. But it's understanding the partnerships and leveraging that. It's a big part of what we do.
Peter, what discussion do you have with your suppliers, with the other end of your supply chain, about innovation and their role in helping you innovate product?
Well, I think we've probably got one, well, if it's an advantage or a disadvantage, it's probably disadvantage on price, but I'm probably not sourcing the quantities that Ewan and Ken are. So I've got quite a mixed economy of sourcing. So we still run our own factory, makes our pillows and duvets, and that's an amazing innovation source. They come up with amazing ideas around that because it's their business too. Then I think we run so many SKUs in so many different industries that we are still open to someone just walking through the door and saying, I've got this and I make it here. And then we have our own Indian sourcing office just starting up, which has got to give us some more leverage. And we've chosen India for all the reasons everyone else is in India. It's not just about price there. It's an incredibly creative culture. And then we were very early into China, particularly in home, where others were not. So I think we leverage very different relationships, and because outside of 3 or 4 areas we're not buying 50,000 units, 100,000 units, we have no choice but to use quite innovative suppliers because there's nothing in it for them unless they're developing something that's unique to them, which we can sell at a slightly higher price because they're not going to get the quantities. So hopefully it happens relatively naturally, but yeah, we need their help. We can't do it without them.
Do you think the vertical integration that Ken was talking about would be helpful to your business if you were able to get more of it?
I think increasingly you find economies of scale, and there's certain areas where we are pretty integrated in that way, and whether it's our power businesses like sheets and towels, things like that. So it's a question for us, as always, for all the reasons that we're talking about, to find which areas we need to run in that way. But because we're 70% brand, it's always a very mixed economy for us.
Ken, but Peter indicates the drawback with vertical integration there, which is that it can shut out innovation from outside, the innovation or the new thinking that you get from having a much wider range of suppliers.
Absolutely, and we were really alive to that. I think culturally, Boots had grew up as a very insular business because of the strength of its vertical integration, and in many ways the merger with Alliance Unichem was a bit of a wake-up call, and the reason it worked so well actually is because Alliance Unichem effectively had really very little in the way of resources or in countervailing power, because it was predominantly a wholesaler, and therefore it had a culture that was almost totally dependent on partnerships. So the infusion of the two strengths have really powered on the Boots business from an innovation perspective, and have opened up our minds to external influence and external partnerships, coupled with some tremendous talent and capabilities within the business. So it's always a balance of trying to mix the two, but you should never lose one or the other.
Okay, I'm going to move on to talk about margins in a second, but if there are questions about supply chain and procurement, there's a gentleman here with his hand up in the, what's that, the third row back. If you just keep your hand up, sir, it makes it easier for us to get the microphone to you. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Richard Lynch from SA Partners. A question about partnering. Experience in retail says that there's never enough time in the commercial floors for long-term partnering, because they're dealing with last week's figures and very short-term focus. Have you found a way through spending the time on developing innovative supply chains, partnering for long-term success, particularly with the challenges of doing that globally now?
Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Every retailer is run by yesterday's figures or the Monday trading meeting and all that kind of stuff. It is inherent in our business. I think what we're trying to do, and we haven't cracked it by any means, is take some of the specialists that are in the operating companies, boost some of the resources down there so that we can keep the day-to-day trading going, and then second them into this network approach. So, for example, in our supply chain, we have a group supply chain network, which is resourced by all the supply chain directors and their kind of key teams across the whole business. We've tried to make it easier for them to connect and to do that. One of our issues is if you're in 8 countries, it tends to take quite a lot of your week if you've got to go to a meeting in Moscow or in Lille. So we put things in which enable that conversation to take place as part of normal business. And that may sound like it's a very basic step, but it's been a major move forward for us. We put telepresence in from Cisco, for example, into all of our sites. And that means that you can have one meeting which is talking about day-to-day trading and what happened last week, and you can go to the next hour and physically connect with Hong Kong, Warsaw, Lille, etc., and talk about some of the more global things. So there's part of that which enables the conversation. I think what we've found is, though, that the stresses and challenges in each operating company in each country are the same. And as long as you set a clear vision of where you're going and allow the network to come up with a solution, then actually the motivation drives that separate conversation. So it drives it away from just having the day-to-day conversation into the development conversation.
Thank you. Peter, what are your thoughts on this?
I agree. I mean, I think that's a spot-on question. I would say that's a permanent challenge for me, and it probably comes down to making sure you've got the right leadership in your organisation. The microphone went up there.
It keeps cutting in and out, which is
Can you hear me now?
disturbing. Can we borrow
that sounds better. We'll see how I get on. So, yeah, it's something I stay awake at night about, because You've only got to see what Turkey's now doing for fashion when people were saying that Turkey was no longer relevant, and you've only got to see what, for our business, what Made in the UK is doing, and that's long been considered irrelevant by many people. And now it's the cause of the day. So I think we need really good leadership, and you need cliches like just reminding people it's exit margin, not intake margin. And you've got to market, you've got to tell people why it's worth what it is, because often the relationship problems that you're talking about come about through price, very rarely about through other things. And if you take our UK factory, we weren't actually telling people they were buying a duvet made in the UK, made by John Lewis Partners, who've got a stake in the business. And we started telling people that, and we sold more. And there's got to be a reason why you have a long-term relationship, which isn't just about price. And you've got to tell the customers why, because to keep that relationship, there must be some integral quality to the product, be it the way it's made or the innovation that comes from there. So I think we have to work really hard on it, and we have to constantly talk to the people that we work with to make sure they understand that point of difference, not just yesterday's numbers. So
just on that point of manufacturing, Philip Green of BHS, in between filling up his tax forms, said that has called for more clothing manufacturing to take place in the UK. Is that something that John Lewis would welcome, would consider, would drive?
I mean, we make in the UK. Whether we need more or not, I think it's very difficult to say that it's a volume business. I think it's a business that you know, a bit like our cars, it serves a niche in terms of something that can be very successful. And it works very well for me, and if all my competitors start doing it, so I might not be as happy with what we've got. So I actually think it works for certain people in certain parts of the market. So I'm not sure if Philip's right in terms of needing lots more. The guys that we have, we need to support and allow them to flourish, because they're really good at what they do, but they're sort of mid to premium, and I sort of think that's what the UK does really well.
Okay, thank you for the question as well. Right at the beginning of the discussion, I've sort of mentioned the theory that in this era of low growth to zero growth in consumer spending, that if you want to boost your margins within your retail business, then own brand is the way to do that. Does that hold, Ken?
It absolutely does, to a point. So ironically, we've seen very unusual behaviour in this market. In fact, a bit of a polarisation. So the dangerous ground over the last 2 years has been the middle ground. So what we've seen is very strong growth at the premium end of the market, and very strong growth at the value end of the market. And that a lot of, particularly in core toiletries areas, a lot of proprietary brands have been discounting so heavily that they have reduced the gap between themselves and the own label products, such that to a certain extent they were squeezing the own label products out of the market, and in terms of cash per box profit, there wasn't a lot of difference. However, where we have been able to generate huge value is where you have a brand that is an own label brand, in the sense that it's owned by the retailer, that has an added value proposition and has a true point of difference in innovation in the market that consumers are willing to pay for. And that really is the only way to drive your margins.
So having the own label brand isn't enough by itself. There's got to be a product differentiation there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, typically in our business, brands play 3 roles. They are either a price anchor for the category, so they are the lowest entry point into the category. They offer the consumer a great price. There is the Me Too, which is effectively a product that is as performant as the brand, but is usually at a 10 to 15% discount to the brand. And then there are the products that are truly innovative in their own right and have a brand equity in their own right, and the consumer would recognise them as such.
Thank you. Peter, sort of the John Lewis thoughts on using own brand to drive higher margin at lower price.
I'm in complete agreement with Ken here, because I think the danger in own brand is deciding it just does one part of your business. So of course it's there to drive more margin. It's always going to have a higher margin than brands as long as you're selling it out. But for us, it's always been about, it can be premium, it can be mid, it can be opening price. So I think we've got a very similar model, and even in hard areas like fashion, at the premium end, we've got designer collaborations where you can buy dress for £300 that would cost you £1,200 normally, and obviously we have to have opening price. And then in home, we're famous for the luxury end of our home product being John Lewis brand, and I think that's increasingly what you need. Otherwise, it looks like you're just segmenting your range for price, and the customer finds you out. And so unless you have the integrity in your brand to see it can stretch everywhere, then it doesn't have credibility for me. That's not true of all sectors, but for us, I think if our brand became an opening price filler, the customer would see through it very quickly.
Okay, thank you. Ken, you were in the room for Ellen's presentation.
Yes.
Are you going to accept the challenge?
Absolutely. I was really compelled by Ellen's presentation. I thought it was really exciting and truly different in the way it was coming at what is a shared global problem in terms of resources. How directly applicable it is to our model because of the nature of our goods is harder to see than with large white goods or vehicles or even technology. But there's definitely something in there for us. So I found it really thought-provoking and something really worth pursuing as a business.
Okay, thank you very much. Ken Murphy, Peter Roos and Ewan Sutherland. Thank you very much.